Welcome to the T-Pac Arcade. Today's game is Rockman for the Nintendo Famicom. In this 1987 action platformer from Capcom, bad guy Dr. Wily has turned good guy Dr. Light's good guy robots into bad guy robots. So Dr. Light sends the goodest guy robot, Rockman, to put a stop to it. The core gameplay here follows standard action platformer mechanics. You run and jump and shoot your way through various gauntlets of enemies and stage hazards, but Rockman's progression and weapon system are what really define the game. So you start out by tackling 6 Robot Master stages, straightforward platforming affairs, each culminating in a one-on-one boss fight against Cutman, Gutsman, Iceman, Bombman, Elecman, or Fireman. And don't be deceived by that last one. He's here to set fires, not put them out. Arson Man would probably be a more accurate title, but then again, Rockman has nothing to do with rocks either, so this game just can't be trusted with sensible naming conventions, which is probably why the franchise was rebranded as Mega Man outside of Japan. The levels are themed after their respective robots, and they each have unique enemies and platforming challenges, like the Scissor Machine in Cutman stage, the hammer-throwing construction guys in Gutsman stage, the fire columns in Fireman stage, the electric beams in Elecman stage, and the propeller penguins in Iceman stage. I generally liked the platforming challenges, especially the disappearing block segments, but the enemies were honestly pretty annoying. Sometimes their attack patterns were too randomized to find a reliable counter, and that goes for the boss fights too. Most of the time I just opted for the scrappiest strategy available, aka frantically shooting as much as possible and hoping their life bar drains to 0 before mine does. There is a way around this method though. See, defeating a boss adds their special weapon to your own arsenal, and certain Robot Masters are weak against the abilities of others. For example, Iceman goes down in just 3 hits from Elecman's lightning beam, instead of like 20 hits from Rockman's standard blaster. And since you can tackle the Robot Master stages in any order, you can strategize to have the right weapons for the right bosses. And you'll need all of those weapons for the 4-part Dr. Wily stage that's unlocked after the first 6 levels. Since all the Robot Masters return for a boss rush, and the stage areas have hazards that require specific weapons to clear, like blocks that can only be removed by Gutsman's strength upgrade, fire columns that can only be passed with Iceman's freezer beam, and vertical shafts that you can only ascend with special platform powers that you get from the Elecman stage. Even still, you have to be mindful of how often you use these weapons, because even though enemies drop health and ammunition refills, you can still easily drain unnecessary power and end up stuck. No more ice beams left? Oh well, guess I'll just have to burn alive and try again later. And luckily, you can try as many times as you need. Not that I'd advocate for setting yourself on fire Arson Man style, but Rockman offers unlimited continues to offset its relatively high challenge level. I was eventually able to beat it with enough trial and error, and the only save states I used were to pause the game overnight between sessions. But there is a huge caveat here. I used the pause trick on the Yellow Devil boss. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a notorious sub-boss in the first Dr. Wily segment aptly named the Yellow Devil, and he pummels you with nearly unavoidable bricks by assembling and disassembling himself at either end of the screen. It's basically an impossible fight for someone with below average reflexes like me, but there's a well-known exploit that spells victory here with a single hit. The pause glitch. If you fire a projectile at him and rapidly pause and unpause the game as it makes contact, it just keeps dealing damage until it's lights out for our one-eyed yellow brick abomination. Is it a cheap trick? Probably, but is it satisfying in an underhanded game-breaking way? Heck yes. The graphics and sound in Rockman are excellent, and about as iconic to the 8-bit aesthetic as any game of the era. You've got some A+ classic Capcom chiptunes, paired with fun audio effects like Rockman's rubber boot squeak when he lands a jump. And the character sprites are arguably some of the most appealing, stylized robot designs in the history of video games. They're colorful and cartoony and full of personality, just like the backgrounds themed after them. My only gripe with the visuals are Rockman's clunky animations. His stiff, party pose jump looks like the world's most stilted hip hip hooray gesture, and he's got this silly single-foot adjust when you nudge him along the edge of a platform, like he stepped in some gum and is trying to discreetly wipe it off his shoe before anyone notices. That being said, there is an undeniable charm to the goofy posing that helps me look past the awkwardness of it all. My favorite part of the game would have to be the checkpoint system. You get to tackle each stage in bite-sized chunks, as long as you've got lives in reserve. And even if you get game over and have to start from the beginning of a level, you've had the chance to learn each part well enough to make your way through again. This also gives you some freedom to try different weapons against each boss without too much risk. But if I could change one thing here, I'd actually remove some of those bosses from the Dr. Wily level. The new ones like the Bubble Machine are neat, and Mega Man fighting a clone of himself is pretty much the coolest thing ever. But I don't want to fight the first 6 Robot Masters a second time. Arson Man already fooled me once, and I'm not inviting him back to my barbecue after what happened last time. Overall, Rockman had me straddling opinions between this is annoying and this is awesome, and I think it's safe to say that it ultimately proved to be awesome. It's no surprise that the foundation for a beloved franchise was built here, and I'm looking forward to party pose jumping through the next several entries someday too.